Hello and welcome back to Rediscovering You. I'm very excited to introduce to you today Janine Hauck. Janine Hauck is an energy empowerment coach, and I am so looking forward to the conversation that we are going to share today. Welcome to the show, Janine.
Thank you so much for having me, Laura. We've only been talking for a few minutes and our stories have just been so similar and it's just lighting me up.
Same. And that's one thing I've loved about going on this journey is just I find that my energy attracts like-minded energy. And it's so just wonderful to meet so many people that are just like on the same wavelength as me. So
Yeah.
can you share just a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah. So obviously, I'm Janine Hauck. I'm an energy empowerment coach. I'm a mom of three. I'm a Canadian girl. I live in Alberta here. And what I do as an energy empowerment coach is basically I have the pleasure of being able to see people's sneaky subconscious blocks and help them do a little bit of spring cleaning, removing some of those blocks so that they can actually achieve beyond the average, but actually achieve the extraordinary life that was meant for them. So many times we have this box or this view of like what we think we can have and our expectations that we have on ourselves. And so once we look into our subconscious blocks, where these beliefs come from, and do that deep cleaning, we can actually begin to make empowered decisions for ourselves. Well, without that preconditioning, what do we actually want? What are we actually choosing? And so when we see it all as a choice, we can become so much more empowered.
Love that. Everything you just said just resonates with me so very deeply. And you're already speaking my psychology language, which I love, talking about the subconscious. How do you help the people that you work with access their subconscious blocks?
It's so interesting. And this is just from my personal experience. I can't speak to how other people do it, but it's so interesting. I find just having the conversation, but just by keeping the safe space and creating that, their subconscious beliefs and thoughts are actually coming out through their conversations and through patterns, but they don't know they're saying it. Sometimes it's the word choice that they use. Sometimes it's maybe the inflection in their voice. Sometimes some things they talk about on repeat, but they don't realize that they're doing it. And sometimes for me, it's very intuitive as well. And so I'll receive downloads, I'll receive guidance and saying like, hey, like, look at this. So it's a little bit of a mix. And that's why I say like, I can speak from myself because it's very much been my own journey. And I've been like taught with breadcrumbs rather than like taught a certain format. It's for sure been through the school of life. And that's what I usually find. The patterns will come up and come through. And fortunately, I'm able to see them.
That's a really good point. And being an outside observer looking in when somebody's sharing conversation with you, you're able to pick up on those patterns because when we are in our own box, it's very hard for us to look at the things that are coming out and see these patterns because we're just too close to it and we don't notice those things. So that's super helpful. And knowing that you also have that intuitive piece as well to help guide you, that's really beautiful. So you
Yeah.
mentioned something about helping people step into the extraordinary. Can you tell me what you mean by that?
So this is something that I discovered, and it really came to me when I was living my life from a form that was kind of, what's the best word? Pre-digested to me, kind of
Mhm.
like the mother bird, like giving the food to the child, and then that's the version they get, right?
Yeah.
It's, as you can tell, I like to work in visuals a little bit. And so I was living a life of going through the phases, and I was like, oh, this is just what I do. This is what I do in my life, and not actually questioning and thinking, why do I do that? Is that right for me? Is that still the truth of mine? And I was just doing the things, well, this is what's expected of me. This is what I do in this stage of my life. And then once I do this stage, I do this stage. And it just felt like my whole life was set out for me. I had shared with you before that when I was 17, I had decided I was going to be the farmer's wife. And that was my plan for my entire life. Like that was it. And like, I love the farm. I still farm girl at heart, even if I don't live out there. And there's nothing wrong with that if it's your path. But for me, it wasn't my path. It was the path that I liked most from where I was right now that was still achievable.
Right.
So I wasn't pushing beyond those limits into anything that I thought that wasn't for me. Like there were so many things that I'm like, oh, that's so great that person is doing that with their life, and not even considering that that could be a possibility for me because it wasn't on the track that I was on. And so by breaking through that, that's when we start getting into the extraordinary.
That's beautiful. Yes. And again, like I can relate to that so much too, because I thought that in my box of like I'm a school psychologist. Like this is my career. This is what I'm gonna do. This is all I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do this from the start and end of my working life. And then like, I don't know, but just because that's what I was told. That's what everybody else is doing. You stay in your track, you stay in your lane, you
Yeah.
don't deviate. And then I don't know about you, but I just kept getting all of these signs and nudges that no, there's actually so much more out there. The world is such a big, beautiful place, and each individual person, each individual soul has infinite potential to do what they want. And if, like you said, you see somebody else doing it, you're like, oh, wow, good for them, but I can't do that. I say, why not? Why can't you do that? What makes any one person more deserving of having that sort of experience or life? We are all equally capable and deserving to create the realities that we want for our lives.
Yeah. And that really speaks to, like you said, you always find like minded people to have your podcast. And that's like where I was in my journey. I was surrounded by people who were doing the same thing as I was set out to do at that time. And so it's really about what your frequency is and what you're attracting. That is the filter to the life that you're creating. Whatever's on the inside is what you're seeing reflected on the outside. And
Mhm.
so that's why it's so important to build such a relationship with your inside so that you can know what it feels like when it's like, this is a yes, this is a no, this
Mhm.
is a let's do this is a okay, let's stop and ask questions. But to be really in a relationship with yourself so you can feel what is right for you, specifically just you.
But I agree with you, and I think a lot of people really struggle with knowing what's right for them and trusting their
Mm-hmm.
intuition because they're part of the program. They're still a working member of the matrix in the system, and like they have their blinders on. So what advice or how do you help the people that you work with learn to start turning inward, learn to have a relationship with themselves, and to start listening to their inner knowing, their inner voice?
So I think the people who are already working with me, they're kind of a couple steps ahead because they know enough that things aren't quite right and that there's more for them enough to ask, which I think that can feel like the beginning for a lot of us, but I think we have to give it a whole lot more credit. What a place it is to have empowered yourself enough to ask for the help that you need and to receive it. So I would say that's even further. I think a lot of times in the beginning, I know it was for me, is being okay to express your thoughts and ask the questions that you have from those around you, even if you might feel silly or
Mhm.
dumb
Mhm.
or any of that. I know it goes right back to the basics, and I know it feels maybe fundamental, but I think we suppress ourselves in so many ways. And I think by giving ourselves permission to just explore it, even if you don't have all of the answers and
Mhm.
get curious, I think that's when you're on the right path. Curiosity, I think, is the biggest key there.
Couldn't agree more. Yes, get curious. And you also speak to really stepping outside of your comfort zone, which is scary. And that's why a
Mhm.
lot of people stay so cozy in their comfort zone because, it's what we know and we're safe there, we're protected there. But as you know, growth cannot happen in the comfort zone. So you have to make that scary step and ask the question. And I agree with you. Even asking and giving yourself permission to ask, that is a step. That is a step. That's you listening to like something inside of you saying, something's a little off, or is there something more? And that is a really amazing first step.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like once you get to that point, there are certain things that have to happen for everyone if they want to step into the extraordinary. And one of them is changing the relationship with comfort and discomfort.
Hmm.
Because I think when we're living in the average, what happens is we're like, that's uncomfortable. That must mean it's not for me. And especially if we're on a spiritual journey, that's one of the things that we can really fall into. If it doesn't feel like love and light, and if it doesn't feel like angels singing, then it must not be for me. But you know that one. But the truth is, discomfort is actually where the growth is. And so you have to dive into your relationship and look at the definitions that you've had and redefine them. I often share with my clients, it's kind of like a Rolodex, where you have all of your cards and stuff. You have to go through your Rolodex regularly and look at it and say, hey, what is still relevant for me and what is time to let go of. Because as you're shifting, as you're becoming new people, which you really are, you're becoming new versions of yourself as you begin asking questions, as you begin getting curious. And you need to keep updating that, because if we are taking actions and steps with our Rolodex still full of past things and past relationships and past stories, then our future is going to be tainted with our past versions of ourselves rather than the empowered version we are now or the curious version we are today.
Mm-hmm. Do you mind speaking to like some of the signs or some of the things that helped you personally shift from being a farmer's wife for your entire life to stepping into this role of an energy empowerment coach, helping other people become extraordinary? Because I imagine that didn't happen overnight for you. Or maybe it did. I don't know.
I wish I could say it did, because I feel like we fall into this thing of like the polarizing social media stories where it's like, I
Yes.
now make this much. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, if I didn't do it that fast, is there something wrong with me?
So true. Oh, this is so true.
So I will say my process definitely took years. I went into hairdressing by trade. In my family, obviously, we're farmers, and
Hmm.
trades are also held very high. If you can make your money by your hands, like you've got a solid foundation. And so I went to hairdressing because that kind of landed most natural for me. And at one point, I got the nudge to go online with my hairdressing. And I was like, so what it started out as teaching moms how to braid their daughter's hair. So that was the leap for me to be online. I didn't know why I was getting the nudge to do this. It didn't fully make sense to me. I was questioning it. I was kind of doing the kicking and screaming the whole way there. Like there was no grace. There was no
Yeah.
grace there. I'm like, hey, I'm doing the work. Where's the reward? How about
Right.
now? Like there was definitely a lot of impatience. And I think to this day that maybe there's still a little bit, but a lot
Hmm.
better for sure. And so, yeah, you know what? A coach was put in front of me on how to do summits. And then so I hosted my first summit. And so I spoke to moms with daughters. I have two daughters myself and then a little son now as well. And so I did that. And then it's interesting. By the time I hosted my next summit, it had progressed to empowering moms. And then the
Hmm.
next summit was empowering women. The next summit was, and then at one point I had to get out of the closet, and I was being pushed out of the closet because behind the scenes, I was doing my oracle cards. I
Hmm.
was talking with my guides, things like
Yes.
that. But none of that was face forward. So my next one, I was pushed out of the closet, and it was for the intuitive entrepreneur. And so it's really funny. I'm very fortunate to see my progression through the summits that I did, but that
Mhm.
was a period of years of going up to that. It was literally putting the pressure on myself to make the diamond. Like, you got a little
Mhm.
bit more clarity, a little bit
Uh-huh.
more clarity, a little bit more clarity. And I've always found that's kind of my journey. I get to do it by doing because I get to have experiences along the way. I get to experience the emotions and those guttural feelings when it's like, I'm still not there. Are you kidding? There's another level. Oh my gosh. Like I got to experience those highs when it went so well. And
Mhm.
then those deep lows when you feel like, am I even on the right path?
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
where is this big payout of whatever riches and ease and all of this?
Right.
And so I definitely went through a lot of those ups and downs until it led to here. And
Mhm.
I don't think my story is finished. And that was a period of a couple years for sure, quite a few years. I can't even think of the timeline now at the moment. But yeah, I share that. I share that because I felt like a failure a lot in that period. And I kept receiving nudges, just trust, keep going, keep going. And so from where I am now, I can see there was wisdom to
Mhm.
be gained on that path. There were people to meet.
Yeah.
There were skills to learn. There was all of that. And so none of it was a mistake. None of it was a misstep. It was just my own expectations that wasn't being met, my own expectations that I had set. And I'm so fortunate for it now.
I appreciate you sharing openly that you had that feeling in the process of feeling like a failure because I think it's really important for people to understand that when you do decide to make a shift in your life, it isn't all rainbows and sunshine. It isn't all what people post on social media. It's hard and there are doubts that come in, and that's a part of the growing process. That is part of stepping outside of your comfort zone to become a different version of yourself. And so when you do have those setbacks, because you will, and those feelings of failure, or I'm not good enough to like, that doesn't mean that you made a mistake by trying. No, it's like you said, it's 100% a part of the process. You needed to experience those things. You needed to have those highs and those lows and meet those people and learn those
Mhm.
skills in order to push you to where you are. And the other piece that I love that you spoke to is that you don't have to know what the end game is. You don't have to know what the end result is. Take a step. Put a video online on how to braid a hair and look, you might end up being an energy empowerment coach in a few years. You don't know. I say that jokingly, but it's so like so a lot of time people like just step outside of
Mhm.
your comfort zone a little bit because you don't know what door that's going to open for you, who you're going to meet, the connection that you're going to make, the idea that gets sparked within you. And most of the time, for myself included and the people that I'm working with, what they think their end goal or their end game is not what it ends up being. And it's usually so much more extraordinary than what they could have imagined.
Yeah. Yeah. If you weren't humble at the beginning of the process, you definitely will be by the end.
That's true. Like the biggest learning curve in your life, it's well, there's so many, but one of the biggest is starting a business on your own. Like you, that's humbling, humbling,
That
humbling.
is the pressure cooker
Yeah.
of personal growth. Because
Seriously.
when you're looking at a business and you're creating a business, so many people are looking at the outward side, like, oh, yeah, there's your business, you're crushing it, everything like that. Or maybe you're not, whatever, doesn't matter. But what's happening on the inside and what's happening in the process is like, you are having every doubt. Am I worthy? Can I do this? Am I good enough? Am I big enough? Am I too small? Am I too big? Like, there's literally every thought and feeling and emotion that is happening on the spectrum. And I always like to direct people back to curiosity. Like, isn't that interesting that that's coming up? Because when you can put it from a place of, oh, isn't that interesting? It neutralizes the emotions from it and it lets you just have the permission to explore and to experience and just get curious and get playful and takes it out of the everything is so serious because I think that's where I was on my journey and that's why it was so challenging in the beginning for sure is because I took it all so serious rather
Mhm.
than it being an experience in my life and like oh how cool that we get to have this experience and this experience and yeah we're on this world to experience but I think as humans we've taken it very seriously.
I agree. And I think that so many adults have lost touch with the joy of your inner child and just having that playful approach to life where
Yeah.
things really are in flow. Because when you are very rigid and try to make things be a certain way and fit a certain thing and follow a certain timeline, you lose the joy, you lose the creativity, you lose the magic that is possible in all of us when we just decide to have fun and when we fall on our faces be curious about, like you said, like instead of like being like, wow, I suck at life or this is not meant for me. It's just like, oh, it's funny how that happens. Like, look at that. I learned from this. I'm not going to do that again. Or I learned, or maybe I'll try it a little bit differently. And you have to, I don't know. I feel
Mm,
like you need to also have a sense of humor
yeah.
with, yeah, and be kind with yourself and patient and
Yeah.
have fun.
It makes the road a whole lot less bumpy because then we're not going back and forth to the polarizing thoughts of like, ah, this means this about me, but rather like, oh, I've seen this before. Okay, maybe I get to listen the second time around. Isn't that funny that that just came up again? And just realize that it's everything is happening for you. And
Mhm.
so if it's coming into your life, it's trying to tell you something, it's trying to show you something, it's letting you experience something. And if we can just, yeah, like you had said from the beginning of how we often like to put ourselves in a box, when we go into play and fun and sparking that imagination and intuition, that blows the box to smithereens.
Mhm.
Suddenly, the path that you thought you needed to take to get from point A to B, it may look all over the place, but maybe there
Right.
was an adventure that you got to have here and a relationship you got to have here and all of these pieces that you needed. I think we're so clear that it needs to be a straight line. And if it's not direct, then it wasn't a success. And so I
Right.
think our definitions are a little wonky.
Agreed. Agreed. Yes, because success, like for most people, it's not a straight line. There's so much fun in like the bird walk and the journey and like the highs and the lows and all the little adventures along the way. And I love what you said about when things, whatever it is, good, bad, indifferent, happen in your life, they're happening for you. They're
Mm-hmm.
happening for you. They are not happening to you. They are happening for you. And that one single word for has so much meaning behind it. When we are able to reframe events in our life and look at why is this happening? What do I need to learn from this right now? How am I going to grow from this experience? What lesson do I am I still repeating that I haven't quite and got the message yet? And look at it, everything. Like life is just like one big school. It really is like the school of life.
Yeah. And what happens when we look at it that way? Suddenly we question, like, why do we have things in hierarchies? Like, this person knows more than me, therefore they're better than me, or this person's been alive for longer, so they're better than. And once we start looking at that, being like, oh, we all just have experiences that we can share with each other and help each other up and move past. And we're not trying to label everything so much. I often like to think about it as we all have puzzle pieces. And
Mhm.
for every person we meet, we're like, hey, I have some puzzle pieces for you, and you have some for me. And you cannot actually get the full, complete picture of your life until you've had these interactions and these experiences. So, if we can break down the barriers of who's accessible to us and who's not, and what experiences are accessible to us, suddenly that puzzle goes from here to bigger and bigger and bigger.
I love that analogy. I love that. Yeah, we all are giving and receiving pieces of our puzzle to one another for the greater collective. Yes, that's awesome. I love that.
I think it really helped me along the way, because for a long time I was like, oh, like, why would they even talk to me? Why would I, like, who am I to walk into that room? And
Mhm.
that's one thing that I did a lot. I walked into rooms before ready. I was ready, but that imposter syndrome, I think it gets you past that. And I
Yeah,
think that's a big barrier that everybody experiences. And I think as we're all growing and creating these extraordinary lives, there are just certain things that we've all experienced. So it's not that one person is better than us. We've just at a different level, a different stage, a different chapter. But it's so interesting how common our stories are if we go back. There may be different characters,
right.
or different scenes, but the similarities is mind blowing.
I know.
Oh,
Definitely people have more similarities than differences. Like truly. Like whatever
yeah.
your backgrounds are, like you said, the characters may be different or it might look a little different, but the themes, the there's so many similarities.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it goes right back to the word. It's so humbling. And
Yes.
I think, yeah, when we're humble, we can just be open and we can just receive
Mm-hmm.
and we can be present. It's truly incredible how much is here for us in the presence when we in the present.
How do you help the people you work with or yourself? How do you help people be more present or learn how to be truly in the moment so that they can receive?
I think part of the thing is giving space for the conversations that are happening in our mind as they're happening. And listening to it and seeing what it's telling you and asking, is this true for me? Is it not? Because if we're not addressing them and we're just like, no, I'm going to ignore it and I'm going to be present, those voices are going to get louder.
Mhm.
So we need to, first of all, address them and give them space and learn the information that it's trying to give us. And sometimes we can say, hey, that's actually not mine, and
Mhm.
you can send it away. And I think that's important to know too. Not everything is yours. Some things stick to us from other people, from different parts of our life. So I think that's a really, really big thing, is first to start with that. Because if you have a busy mind, it can be hard to get to present because we're in the future, we're in the past, we're
Mhm.
kind of mixing it all together. And then things feel muddy and heavy and unclear. So I would always start with that. And the other thing that I find is huge, huge, and I always teach with everyone, is gratitude.
Yeah.
Gratitude will get you grounded and in the present faster than anything I know. And it'll ground you from the heart, not the head, which is so powerful, because from our heart, that's where we connect with others. That's where we connect with ourselves. That's like our soul language. That's the actual brain we should be listening to. And
Mhm.
so when we can express gratitude, I am so happy and grateful for this conversation that I'm having with you. It takes us to the present, because nobody's saying, I'm so happy and grateful for something that hasn't even happened. It's really about being in this moment right now.
Right, right. Yes. And I think that I like that you brought up like coming from the heart and not the mind. That is such, and I find that I agree with you to be such a helpful strategy for helping people to become more grounded because I think a lot of people live in their minds, like are from the neck up, like thinking like that
Yeah.
is like the think like that's where all decisions and everything should come from. But there's so much wisdom through our entire body when we learn to tune into it and to really listen to it and communicate through those ways.
Yeah.
I love that for a strategy.
Yeah. I think like if somebody hasn't had the experience or they're like, I don't know how to get from my head to the heart, like how does
Mhm.
that? I would say everybody has experienced this, and the benefits from going from your head to your heart, you'll find when you're actually manifesting from your heart, when you're actually thinking from your heart, suddenly all the problems that you thought you had that you have to deal with now in this moment, like they fall away. And so one of the ways to show you that you've done this is, if you don't think you've done this before, have you ever gone out to nature and then all of a sudden, like even if you had deadlines and things going on, you went out to nature and suddenly your mind was clear and you're like, what do I need to be worrying about right now? What do I need to be thinking about? And you can't think of anything. Well,
Mhm.
that's because you've dropped out of your head and into your heart. And
Mhm.
that's actually what's required for you in that moment, is to just be in peace with yourself. And when something is meant for your attention, you'll receive it then too. It'll
Mhm.
come to you. You'll have that thought, but it's not going to be among a sea of 1,000 thoughts. It's going to
Right.
be much more subtle, much more quiet. And I
Mhm.
think once we start that process, it can be scary because what we're doing is we're like, well, something's going to fall apart. Something's going to fall through the cracks.
Right.
And so those are the conversations. As those, like I said, as those conversations come up, we get to address them and look at it. Is that fear or is that fact? Is that our
Mhm.
coming from our head, our heart? And we get to really get curious
Back to that curiosity always.
with,
Really happy you brought up nature too. I think that's just something that it's free for most people in most places, that it's very helpful for us as humans to reconnect with nature and bring us back into that heart space and out of our minds. And even if you just take 10 minutes to go outside and be with nature, listen to the sounds, see the sights, be barefoot if you're able to. Um, yeah, that definitely helps to pull you out of your mind and help you be more present and have gratitude, because how can you not feel some level of gratitude when you are amongst, the beauty of nature and trees, birds, like everything. It brings us back to who we are in our essence.
yeah, yeah, then things get quiet and then we can actually discover who we actually are again
Hmm.
without all of the layers from that we've collected through lifetimes, this lifetime, generations, all of it. And so I would say that's such a great, as much as you can be bringing that in, that feeling that you feel when you're in nature, as much as you can keep bringing that back into your present, that's going to be a huge change in your entire life. That's an entire paradigm shift. And
Hmm.
how you experience the world will completely change.
So true. So true. Yes, if you can live from that space, yes, you see things literally different in
Mhm.
every aspect of your life. I've got kind of, I don't know if it's a weird question, but it just popped up, so I'm going to ask you. So, since you've been on your journey making these shifts and changes in your own life, personally, career, all of it, have you received any pushback or any questions or criticism from any people along the way? And if you have, how have you dealt with it?
That's a good question. I would say at different stages, yes. And I would say most of the pushback that I experienced was actually the conversations I was having in my head of what I thought they would think about me or say about me.
It just goes back to our thoughts. Yes, it's not reality. It's just what we're
It goes
thinking.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as a coach, you'll sometimes face people who become triggered and they don't know how to handle it. And so they will lash out at you. So I've experienced that, but I am aware that that is part of it sometimes. But I think one of the first and the biggest hurdles that I came up to, even as early as doing online braiding, I was like fearful of like what my family would think about me, because all of my life, all of my path from being a farmer to hairdresser, all of that, that was, I had a good childhood. And so I felt like I had to honor my family in that way. And that was the form that I honored. And if I veered off that path, it would feel disrespectful or like I didn't appreciate everything I had received. And so that for me was a very big milestone, because what I was doing is breaking the mold that I was put into or poured into.
Mhm.
And so I think that's one of the things a lot of people do, is whether it's your family or your close friends, you end up breaking the mold and the version of how they see you. And you're not sure if they're going to love you as your new version of yourself. And that's terrifying. We have been programmed that like you need a community, and it's so true. You do need a village, you do need a community, but part of that got twisted, that we need to fit in to
Mm.
be part of the community, to be loved. And even though it was an entrepreneurial journey for me, just like anyone, I was a human in that entrepreneurial journey. So love has to be a part of the equation. And so when you feel like that's going to be taken away from you, or it may not be there in a form, that can be scary. And that can feel like that going to the edge and taking that leap
Hmm.
because there are no guarantees. And so at that time, that was one of my hardest first hurdles that I had to step through. And I can say now, from being in the other side, I realize now a lot of the conversations, the perspectives that I thought they would have, the conversations that I thought they would have, or anything like that, it was actually more happening in my head. Once I actually transitioned through that, my outside reality did not change a lot. There were some people that fell out that weren't there, but as far as like my family was my concern at that time, it really didn't shift a lot. They're like, now to this day, they're like, I don't really know what you do, but hope you're happy. Yes, maybe they don't get it. And maybe they're not like, oh, they can talk about it fluently or anything like that. The fear was like losing the love, losing belonging. And I think that's a big part of our journey. Like, man, what if we don't belong? Who am I? Like, we identify ourselves in relation to those around us so much.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I can also personally resonate with that, just the fear of I am breaking the mold of what people see me as and what people think I am and what I'm capable of, and don't want to be disrespectful or appear ungrateful. And so, like, it's amazing how beautifully you articulated something that I've experienced, and I'm sure so many others that are choosing to break the mold experience. Yes. I'm hoping that you could spend a little bit of time right now talking about the types of services that you offer. And if anybody is listening to this conversation and interested in learning more or working with you directly, how might that happen?
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to share that. One of the ways that I like to work with people most is one on one because we get so personal, we get to get so intimate. And it's such a beautiful space to be able to hold you wherever you are as you transition into remembering who you're meant to be and the power of who you are. So I always love working one on one. I am in the process of creating a program. It's not released yet, but there are a couple free ways also that you can work with me or that you can experience a little bit of the shift as well. And one of them's on my website, and it's the 2025 blueprint. And so what it is in there, you can share a little bit about what your goals and aspirations are in 2025, and I will give you some guidance. I'll give you a card pull to be able to help you get laser focused, and I'll be able to show you a little bit intuitively where maybe there's some resistance and blocks we can remove before we even get there. And the other thing that I love doing for people, I'll bring it up because we talked about it a little bit today about not taking it so serious. I do have a frequency of joy challenge, and it's free, and it's inviting us to get a little bit silly, a little bit curious, a little bit playful. And for 5 days, I'll give you different prompts of things that you can do that will shake you out of maybe what you think is proper and right for you at this time. And it'll shake you out of that and challenge you to do things like splash in puddles and make maybe dandelion crowns. And like I said, completely silly, but the purpose of that is to completely shift your frequency around how you experience joy.
I love that. That is so cool. Yes, because a lot of people don't know how to get into joy, but when you give them such a tangible thing, they would think, "Oh, only children can do that. I can't possibly do that." Like, how can you be grumpy if you're splashing in muddy puddles and making dandelion crowns? Like
Yeah.
that's so cool. I love that.
Suddenly you look at all the rules that you had made for yourself of
Yeah.
why you can't do that, why that's not available for you. And when you can see all of those rules you've made yourself, you'll start looking at where have I applied rules on myself in other areas of my life.
To truly help you expand. That's so cool. I love that. Janine, is there anything else that you wanted to share with the audience about who you are or what you do or any closing message that you have?
I think just in what we talked about, I think I shared a lot of my journey, warts and all. And I think that's the part of the journey that I want to highlight because at no point was I on the wrong path, even though it felt that way. And so I just want to remind people that maybe if they're in the shadows, maybe if they're in the challenging parts, that like it's all happening for you. And sometimes we just need somebody else to be able to shine a light on the parts that we're not able to see for ourselves. And so if anybody out there is feeling like it's been a little dark for a little too long, or if they're ready to get out of the average and into the extraordinary, reach out to me. I would be happy to help them.
Janine Hauck, thank you so much for sharing your beautiful energy and your insights with us on the show today. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
The pleasure's been mine. It's been such a wonderful conversation.